I want to welcome everybody to our November LASO meeting. We have an excellent presentation tonight. Glenn Minshall, our team member, Bob Thompson, is going to introduce Glenn, and he is also going to handle the Q&A that will follow. And Diane Godey, who's also a team member, will follow up the end with the evaluation and announcements. Right now, I want to take just a minute. One of our members, Susan Schrader, had contacted me a few days ago about the fact that her club had actually used the philatelic Jeopardy tool that Bob Finnegan from Tri-County Stamp Club here in New York State had shared with the group back in August. And Susan agreed to do a couple minutes just to let everybody know how it went and really kind of reinforce the idea that we can learn from each other. So Susan, why don't you go ahead and share this with us, and we'll come back and get back to Glenn. Go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. So yes, we did philatelic Jeopardy, and I probably, Bob, it was such a great idea that I wanted to create one of our own. And this was my file structure. I had 5 different titles, and there was a slide with the question and then another slide after that with the answer. And I thought I was being, let's see, very creative. Let's see, but here's a typical question, but and then here is the answer slide. A couple of things I learned is I didn't want to have it in the same file because, when you open that PowerPoint, then you can see the answer along with the question, right? And then another thing I did is you see down here, it says back to Jeopardy board. I put a hyperlink in there to take us back to a different file that had all the different 5 categories and things like that on it. Let's see, did it? Oh. I don't know if it's going to go or not. Doesn't look like it. But anyway, I ended up not using that because it was kind of awkward and it took more time to flip back and forth like that. So I ended up using just the file structure. And when a team said that, oh, we wanted this one, I would just open up that file. So we had 3 teams. And so what we did is we divided everybody up. And at first they didn't know who they wanted to be with. So we just counted 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And they separated around the 3 tables. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't have any buzzers, So I had rulers and I put like a Christmas ribbon and bows at the top. And there were 3 different colors, one for each team. And they could wave it up there when a team had the question. And then, a lot of our members are visually challenged, right? So I had to make sure that the signs were big enough. So I actually printed, the 5 different categories in the hugest, there it is, font 110. And then I hung all of this stuff on the wall with painter's tape. And so as they called out that I want this one, I would take that away. And I did not have to keep track of their score because when a team got a question right, I just handed them the piece of paper that had the $500 on it or the $400 on it. And then at the very end of the game, every team just tallied up their score. So I didn't have to keep track of who was winning, or whatever. There was a time when halfway through I asked them to say, okay, how much does each team have? So they kind of knew where they stood or whatever. So, but anyway, we had fun. So I think what I did is I overestimated their level of knowledge. And some of the questions were really hard for them, but that's okay. So what we ended up doing was, okay, if nobody knows, then okay, Google it real quick. And the first team that got it, got it.
Yeah, Googling it really helps, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, yeah, but they were not allowed to play with their phones or whatever, during the initial time of each question, and only if, everybody got stuck. And then, some of them were a little anxious about knowing enough information. And I just reminded them that it was just for fun and it's just for learning.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Mhm.
a lot of people went away with, I really did learn a lot of about some of the stamp history and things like that. So I think they had a good time. I got some good comments. I didn't get anything, like, oh, I hate this game. So I think I'm going to make another one. And thanks again, Bob, for the idea.
Yeah.
I've given the whole zip file to Antone, and I told him that, anybody who wants to use it can use it. I don't really care. It took me a long time to make it up
Mhm.
because what I
Okay.
like to do with each answer is put a little bit more information, a little fun
Yeah.
fact or whatever. So,
So,
and it took a
Susan,
while to find some really
yeah.
interesting details. You really have to dig. And I know that there's quizzes and stuff like trivia quizzes out there and stuff, but some of that I thought was too easy, but maybe it would have been just right for the first time. I'm not really sure, but
Susan, thank you. That's really
yes,
great. I
you're
appreciate
welcome.
that. And if anybody is interested in getting in touch with Susan, I'm sure she would be happy to
I,
give you
yes,
more information.
I
Thank
would
you
be
very much.
happy to share. So,
Okay. What we're going to do is move forward. I'm going to pass on to Bob Thompson. Before I do that, everybody, please mute yourself, please, during the presentation. Everyone. Now, I got to tell you, usually I am the muter. If somebody doesn't mute themselves, I go ahead and mute. But for some reason tonight, my mouse, the cursor, isn't allowing me to do that. I can't imagine what happened. Somebody decided I was just too mean. They won't let me do it. The only thing I can do is ask you to mute. But if everybody would mute themselves, and then I'm going to pass it on to Bob. Bob, go ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone. And as they would say in New Zealand, kia ora. Tonight's presenter is Glenn Minshall. He's going to present on New Zealand stamps. Glenn is a native Kiwi. He has a number of years in a variety of organizations, 25-year member of the APS, 20-year plus member of the Royal Philatelic Society of New Zealand, which I have to say produces a magnificent journal, and the New Zealand Society of Great Britain, NATA. He was a former secretary and president of the Brattleboro Stamp Club, and he's still a member of that, as well as the Charlottesville Stamp Club. And as a New Zealand collector myself, I'm really looking forward to Glenn's presentation tonight. So Glenn, it's all yours. I'm going to mute myself.
Glenn, the
Thanks,
one
Bob.
thing you might want to do is share your screen right now if you want to. Go ahead.
How are we doing there, Antonis? Have I successfully shared?
Yes.
Oh, great. Good evening, folks. Thanks for being here tonight and giving me the opportunity to present my little country to you through the visuals of stamp and stamp collecting. Just a quick background. As Bob said, I'm from New Zealand. I grew up in Wellington, New Zealand, the capital city. And I came to the United States in 1995 to get married and to live here. And I sort of suffered some culture shock, and taking up stamp collecting for the first time helped me stay connected to the little country that I had left behind. So I'm not a lifelong stamp collector. Just been at it for the last 25, 30 years. The first iteration of this PowerPoint was an explanation, a visual explanation of stamp collecting terms aimed at beginner intermediate collectors. and it was presented to the stamp clubs I have belonged to and did belong to, and most of the memberships in the beginning to intermediate range, not too many specialist collectors. For the purposes of this presentation, I've added some historic and cultural references so that you get to know a little bit about New Zealand, the country, and where it came from. And I'm hoping that you'll come out of it with an interest in the country itself and in the many stamp collecting avenues that I'm just going to give you a hint of. Just fair warning, this presentation is A to Z, or A to Z, as we would say in New Zealand, so it's not chronological. So I'm hopeful that you won't get confused by the lack of chronology. And it's definitely not a specialist look at New Zealand stamps, simply an introduction. So here goes, New Zealand, A to Z, A to Z.
Glenn, sorry for the interruption, but some people are having a little bit of difficulty, and I know that you're having to use a phone as well as your computer. But if you could turn your sound up a bit, it would help.
Is that better, Bob? How's the volume now?
Better.
Oh, great. Just to start off, where on earth is New Zealand? It's in the southern Pacific Ocean. The body of water between New Zealand and Australia, which I'm just outlining there, is known as the Tasman Sea. Here's the Pacific Ocean. And the body of water that separates New Zealand from Antarctica is the Southern Ocean. To give you an idea of distance, from the top of the North Island to, which is up here, to Wellington, capital city down there, is 700 miles by road, and that's about 1,100 kilometers. Distance from Wellington, New Zealand to Sydney, Australia is 1,400 miles or 2,200 kilometers. And the distance from Auckland, which is up here, to Los Angeles across the Pacific Ocean is 6,500 miles, 10,500 kilometers approximately. This souvenir sheet here shows 4 main cities of New Zealand: Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, and Dunedin, and also 2 of the main visitor centres that people are attracted to: Queenstown here in the South Island and Rotorua here in the North Island. New Zealand consists of 3 islands: the North Island, South Island, and down here, not to forget, Stewart Island. Getting into the A to Z's, New Zealand was named by Abel Tasman in 1642 or thereabouts, as he was traveling from the east, from Jakarta in the East Indies, looking for a continent on the Southern Ocean. But to our indigenous people, the Maori,
Glenn, your sound went out.
I think you muted yourself.
Glenn, on the screen, you're muted. Is that intentional?
See if we can get, are you hearing me now?
Can hear you now, yes.
Oh, great. Looks like we're back in action now. Sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened. The European discoverer of New Zealand was Abel Tasman, and he visited in 1642, but didn't.
We've lost your, sorry, but we've lost your slides.
That's weird. What is going on here? Bob, what are you seeing?
We're just seeing each other, the individuals who are signed in. They're seeing me eat cheese and crackers.
Oh,
He's no longer got his screen shared.
no, my main screen here is not doing anything.
Is it allowing you to share, Glenn?
The screen I'm looking at is,
If you go to the bottom of the page and it says share, there's a green button that says share. Click on that, and it should then give you some options, and one of the options will be your PowerPoint.
unfortunately, I'm not getting, let's see. I'm going to attempt to share it again.
There you, yeah,
That is show.
that's it. So if you just, yeah,
Are we back in action here?
Yes. Now,
you got it.
Sorry about that. I have no idea what caused that. Did folks hear about Aotearoa? Bob, are you still hearing me?
yes.
So Abel Tasman was the European discoverer of New Zealand, and he visited from the East Indies in 1642. However, he
Now,
had... Hello? Bob, Anton, are you hearing me now?
yes.
Oh, great. Okay, so we'll just move on to airmail stamps. That's a category that people are interested in. And New Zealand's first airmail stamps were produced in 1931. advertising. In 1883, the stamps top left there are known as the second side face issues and featuring images of Queen Victoria. And if you turn those over, there were these advertising images on the back of the 1883 issues. The advertising pieces proved not to be too popular because people didn't like attaching their tongues to the ink, even though they were attaching them to gum. So they were just in vogue for a year. Antarctica in 1908, Shackleton's expedition to King Edward VII Land in Antarctica, they used New Zealand stamps. They overprinted New Zealand stamps, and they were used by expedition members. On the left there, Robert Falcon Scott's expedition to Victoria Land in 1911, they overprinted the similar stamps with Victoria Land and used by expedition members. On the right there, New Zealand is continuing the tradition of Antarctic stamp production. Each year they come out with the Ross Dependency or Scott Base issue, as seen on the right there. 1998, New Zealand Post's monopoly on stamp distribution on mail distribution in New Zealand was deregulated, and alternative postal operators were able to apply for mail, letter, and package distribution. So that led to alternative postal operators, many of which have come and gone, but to this day, there are still alternate postal operators delivering letters in New Zealand and to overseas destinations. New Zealand's first bicolor stamp was in 1898. Prior to that, they were all monocolor, and this was part of the 1898.
The whole 90 area is heavily guarded. Seems like intelligence estimate is correct. This is a crew.
Sorry about that. Are we still hearing me? Bob, are you hearing me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great. So in 1898, part of the first pictorial issue, this image of Lake Taupo featured brown and blue, and that denomination was changed in 1904 to 4 pence to line up with UPU, Universal Postal Union, color requirements. So New Zealand's first bicolor. Bisect, it's a stamp cut in half, and the denomination amount is also cut in half. So in 1857 to 59, the half ounce rate from New Zealand to the United Kingdom was 6 pence, but there were no 6-penny stamps yet. There were 1 penny, 2 penny, and 1 shilling. And the postmaster in Otago, in the bottom of the South Island there, he had no 2-penny stamps, so he bisected the 1 shilling stamps for the 6-penny rate for letters to go to from New Zealand to the United Kingdom. The stamp on the left there, the bisect, is an image from the Canterbury Museum, and the cover on the right is an image from stampforumboards.net. Captain Cook, second European to come across New Zealand, and he made 3 voyages of exploration. First one in 1769, and he did set foot on New Zealand, setting forth the United Kingdom's colonizing efforts in the country. Commemorative stamp issues were initiated in New Zealand in 1906 with this 4-stamp issue for the Christchurch exhibition. The themes for the exhibition, which ran from October 1906 to April 1907, were Māori arts and crafts and Captain Cook once again, which you can see on the threepenny stamp there, bottom left. Christmas stamps. New Zealand's first Christmas stamp was in 1960, and Christmas and holiday stamps continued to be issued until this day. And to the right there are New Zealand's first Christmas seals, which I guess are a type of Cinderella, which is stamp-like label, not valid for postage. COWLS. Now here's a deviation from the norm. COWLS stands for Customized Advertising Labels, and in 2004, New Zealand Post authorized either individual or business owners to create and use their own stamps that were approved and printed by the New Zealand Post Office. So top left there is New Zealand's first customized advertising label produced by for the Wellington Arts Festival. Next to it is a second stamp, slightly different rate because the postage rate went up, created by BMW. And below that, stamps produced by Australia New Zealand Bank, 5 cents, which was the make-up rate. These stamps continued to be issued until 2019, and here are the issues from the companies and individuals who produced their own stamps in 2019. The Shallon issue. So this is getting into D for the definitives. So definitives, long-running stamp issues that are reprinted and changed over a period of time. These are also known as the full-face queens, the Shallons, and the original engraving by Humphreys is on the left, of the painting by Arthur Shallon in the middle there, and an image of the master die. Here's a simplified issue of the New Zealand Shallons. And a little later, these same stamps were perforated, and there's a simplified set of them there. Errors. The most famous, perhaps, New Zealand error is called the teddy bear error. And if you look at the stamp on the left, it shows an infant and a teddy bear facing forward, and it implies that the child seat and the teddy bear seats were forward facing when the law required for a child seat to be facing to the rear of the vehicle. So these stamps were issued and then recalled, and if you look at the stamp here, the teddy bear has disappeared. So they're issued in both self-adhesive form, as on the left, and on the right in gummed form. So the teddy bear disappeared, sorry to say. Moving on to F, New Zealand's first pictorials featured mountains and bird life and the 8-penny stamp here featured the British Crown and the first image of Maori. So in the bottom circle of the 8 is a Maori canoe, also known as a waka. So New Zealand's first pictorial issue. Game bird habitat stamps. So these are not a stamp that is used for postage. Hunters are required to purchase one of these and apply it to their license, and the funds are used for game bird and wildlife habitat development. So these are the equivalents of the duck stamps in the United States. Health stamps, also known as charity or semi-postal stamps, came into being in 1929, and they continued to be issued annually until 2016. So if you look at the stamp on the left there, you'll see 1 penny for postage, 1 penny for charity. They issued the same stamp in 1930, except they took out the tuberculosis reference and just put in help promote health. And on the right there, it's the last health stamp issue in 2016. Invert. So this stamp here, if you look carefully, the mountain is inverted in relation to the rest of the stamp. And the stamp, as it should look, is shown to the right of it. This stamp was produced in 1904, and as it went through the press, I guess the sheet of stamps was reversed in order, creating the invert of the mountain. Only one of these exists, and it's at the Te Papa Museum in Wellington. But at some time there were another 79 of these, and they still may be lurking in some collections yet to be found. To the right is the 2004 Olympic Games stamp featuring Peter Snell from the 1960 Rome Olympics. If you look at the top stamp, that's as it should be, and below it, the laminate attachment to the stamp, because it's a lenticular stamp or a moving motion stamp, has been attached upside down. So that's a modern form of New Zealand invert stamp. Joint issue is stamps produced by countries of the same design, but with different country name and denominations. And in 1988, New Zealand and Australia celebrated Australia's bicentenary with this issue. And another joint issue, New Zealand jersey, commemorating the Queen's 80th birthday. I think that came from 2006. Kiwi gets various interpretations, so I thought I'd just illustrate that. Top left, in the United States, we call these kiwi. In New Zealand, we call them kiwi fruit. To the right there is the native bird, the kiwi, and it's a national symbol. And below that, various New Zealand people, and we are called Kiwis. So different interpretations of the word kiwi, kiwi fruit, kiwi bird, and Kiwis. To bring it back to stamp relevancy, in 2009, New Zealand Post introduced the Kiwi stamp, which is the equivalent of the United States forever stamp. So holds its value forever, sweet is just a typical term for that's good. And to the right there is the stamp booklet that has these stamps inside, the Kiwi stamp. I talked about the New Zealand explorers who came across New Zealand, Cook and Tasman. The Maori people migrated to New Zealand in the 12th and 13th century from eastern Polynesia and probably the Cook Islands, Tahiti region, and their preeminent navigator and explorer, seafarer, was Kupe. And that's a 2019 issue that celebrates his and his family's achievements. Life insurance stamps, they come from the government life insurance department. In 1891, they produced stamp on the left, and if you'll notice, it has the the VR for Victoria Regina. She died in 1901, and they issued the same set of stamps in 1904, featuring the lighthouse without VR. These stamps continued to be issued until the 1960s. They featured the lighthouse, which was seen as an image of security. Mini sheet. The first mini sheet were these health stamps featuring the surf lifesavers, issued in 1943. And above that, the first commemorative mini sheet issued was the Captain Cook mini sheet that was issued in 1961. Matariki, getting on to the M's, is the Maori New Year. So it features the Seven Sisters, the star cluster that rises in New Zealand in early winter, so late June, early July. So Matariki, the Maori New Year. Newspaper stamp. Prior to 1873, newspapers were able to be posted for free in New Zealand, but in 1873, a halfpenny surcharge was instituted, and these stamps produced from a woodblock created in Australia. The woodblock was brought over to New Zealand and printed in New Zealand. So the first stamp printed in New Zealand. It was only legal to use these on newspapers and not on general mail. And last year, New Zealand Post produced a souvenir sheet featuring the newspaper stamp commemorating the 150th anniversary. Official stamps were used by New Zealand government departments. See if I can pull up before the stamps printed with official came about, a hand stamp was used. So if you just look underneath the red marker there, you'll see the words OPSO for on private, on business only. Later on, stamps were printed official and used on mail, as you can see here on this cover. So official stamps used by New Zealand government departments. An offset or a set-off is when a stamp goes through the printing press and ink that hasn't dried gets attached to the gum of the stamp that comes above it. So this stamp here on the left is the stamp as it was printed, and you turn it over and it's got a ghost image reversed printed on the reverse of the stamp. Pigeon post was another peculiarity of the New Zealand post collecting postal scene. Great Barrier Island sits in the Hauraki Gulf just off the coast of Auckland, so about 60 miles away from Auckland, and a pigeon service was used to send messages between Auckland and the Great Barrier Island between 1897 and 1908. A philatelist at the time came up with the idea of using stamps to pay for the postage. And there were two companies operating in competition with each other. The stamps on the left were produced by the original Great Barrier Pigeongram service, and the stamps on the right were produced by the Great Barrier Pigeongram Agency. You'll see the circles there indicating how the letters were attached to the pigeons, and these messages were called flimsies. So they were on very fine tissue paper or Japanese rice paper, and these stamps were attached to the rice paper, making it the first airmail stamp that was ever used. You can't call it a stamp because it was only a local, but nevertheless, it's a unique contribution to the idea of airmail stamp collecting, the pigeon post. Postage dues, these were produced in 1899, so letters that were posted and underpaid, post office would put one of these on, and the person receiving the letter was required to pay the amount that was indicated by the postage due stamp. Queen Elizabeth II was crowned in 1953, and although this wasn't the first New Zealand stamp to feature the Queen, it's a pretty attractive series, issued 1953-54. Revenue stamps on the top there, stamp duty revenue stamps, and below that, they were produced in 1867 for different taxes and levies from the government. And below that, postal fiscals that were produced in 1882. So theoretically, while the postal fiscals were mostly for revenue use, they were used for high denomination stamp requirements such as parcels. So revenues and postal fiscals there. The first self-adhesive stamp is on the left here, featuring the New Zealand kiwi bird, and that was in 1991. And the first settlement or side-by-side stamps on the right there, produced in 1977. So stamps of different designs joined together. A tete bêche, head to tail. Princess Elizabeth, the new 1943 health stamps were the first tete bêche stamps produced in New Zealand. And to the left there, centenary of the pigeongram, which we just mentioned, were produced by New Zealand Post tete bêche, head to tail. New Zealand would be a great country for topicals or thematic collectors. So birds, dinosaurs, aircraft, ships, railways, sport, teddy bears, butterflies, you name it. Universal postage, 1901, 1 penny postage rate was brought into being by the government of the time, and this stamp paid the rate to any overseas country that would accept a 1 penny postal rate. That rate was taken away at the start of the Great War in 1914 and was not reinstituted until 1923. Vending machine labels, another interesting aspect of Kiwi philately. So when the post office was closed, some post offices, not many, had machines and customers could go in there and code in the amount of postage they wanted to pay and produce these labels that were then put on the envelope that they were sending and then put in the mailbox. These are also called framer labels. A withdrawn issue. In 2006, New Zealand Post had these stamps designed featuring kapa haka, or Maori song and dance. And then a day or so before they were to be released to the public, complaints were made about the cartoonish quality of the images, and the stamps were officially withdrawn before they were issued. However, some customers on mail order had these stamps posted to them before they were withdrawn completely. So people on standing orders received their stamps. New Zealand Post asked people to return their stamps, but most of them said, knowing that the potential value of them, we ordered the stamps, we paid for them, so we're going to keep them. So these stamps were withdrawn before they were issued, but sent to standing order customers before they could be completely withdrawn. And interestingly, in 2022, to commemorate Maori language, Te Reo Māori, this set of stamps was designed, and the booklet was produced and sent out to people, the booklet on the left. 2 days before the issue of the stamps, lo and behold, the same issue arose, and complaints were made about the cartoonish quality of the stamps, and they were never issued. So they were withdrawn before issue, and standing order customers did not get to receive these. Just an interesting sidebar. Year of the Dog, Year of the Horse. Year of the Dog, 2008, were New Zealand's first Lunar New Year stamps, and they continue to today. So Lunar New Year, year of the whatever animal is applicable to the year. And express delivery. 1907, the top left stamp, and that was in use until 1939, when the 6-penny stamp below it, with featuring the car, replaced it. So the mail would come to the post office, and the post office had that service. The letter or package would be delivered immediately. And the cover there just illustrating a use of express delivery stamp. Zealandia. So the image in the central vignette is the personification of New Zealand. So giving person qualities to the country, much like Britannia for the United Kingdom or Marianne for France. So that was also a penny universal stamp, but also the image of Zealandia created for the country of New Zealand. In 2006, I think, New Zealand Post issued its own A to Z of New Zealand stamps, some of them on serious topics such as universal suffrage for women. New Zealand was the first country to allow women to vote, but many others just pure whimsy. Also a K for Kia ora there that Bob mentioned at the start of the program. Couple of excellent publications you might look into if you're interested. Bruce Sargent, who was born in New Zealand but now lives in Australia, recently produced the New Zealand Stamp Errors and Varieties book, and it's fantastic. I recommend it if you're interested in errors, freaks, and oddities. And on the right there is an excellent book by Robin Gwynn, giving a really excellent outline to almost all New Zealand philately. Catalogues, on the left there is the Campbell-Patterson catalogue. It's loose leaf and the binder there in the middle that you can see, and updated pages are sent out each year, and you can replace them in the catalogue. So that's a specialist catalogue for New Zealand stamp collectors. On the right there is a simplified New Zealand catalogue produced by Auckland City Stamps. And somebody mentioned the excellent publication, the quarterly publication produced by the Royal Philatelic Society of New Zealand on the left there, and the New Zealand Society of Great Britain also produces a masterful quarterly called the Kiwi. And just to finish off, there's some references that might be useful moving forward. New Zealand Society of Great Britain, Royal Philatelic Society, Auckland City Stamps, the collections at Te Papa, from where I got the invert image, and Virtual New Zealand's.blogspot is an excellent online resource if you want to use your computer to investigate Kiwi stamps. And as they say in the movies, folks, that's all for now, apart from questions and answers.
Glenn, this is Bob. Thank you. In looking at the comments, one question that I've already seen refers to the advertising stamps from the 1800s. And it's about the companies, and did they pay for that advertising?
I believe they did. So they would have paid the New Zealand Post and Telegraph Department at the time. But as I noted, that service only lasted for a year because that technique proved very unpopular with the public.
One thing that when I was in New Zealand and I showed a friend those stamps, he didn't know about them even, but he was surprised how many of the companies that advertised are still active.
Right. Cadbury's for one.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I have one, Bob. I'd like to just quickly ask, Glenn, you may have mentioned it, I may have missed it, but is it legal to put somebody's picture on a stamp in New Zealand, but for the Queen, by the way, whose picture was all over the place, while they're still living?
Yes, it is.
Okay, can you give some examples? Who would show up?
To give an extreme example, New Zealand Post offers the service of personal stamps. So you can produce your own image and send it to them and put it on a stamp and use it to mail a letter.
Okay.
I did that for my daughter's first anniversary, put her wedding picture on New Zealand stamp and gave them to them. But they also regularly issue stamps for the All Blacks, the football team, and their
Right.
images are there.
Right.
Rugby.
Rugby, yes.
If I can interject here for just one moment, I'm a very lonely collector and specialist in New Zealand stamps living in Atlanta, Georgia. And this was delightful to see a nice presentation for just general stamp collecting that showed the huge variety. New Zealand issued every kind of stamp there is. And usually they were a lot prettier than U.S. stamps at the time. I thank you, Glenn. I too am a member of RPSNZ, and it was just nice to see someone put out why we love this collection.
Oh, that's great. What specialist area do you work with?
I collect everything New Zealand. It started, my grandfather, my father, and I we're pen pals with people in New Zealand. So we've collected a lot of covers, and also all the stamps. I have a very extensive collection. I also collect any place that has New Zealand stamps that were overprinted for use, say in their island dependencies. So that would be like Niue, Aitutaki, Cook Islands, of course, Penrhyn Island. It's been going for years, and again, it was just nice to hear a fellow member of the society present to American collectors. Hopefully, they'll be stimulated to have as much fun. When you think about U.S. stamps or German stamps, or obviously British stamps and many others, they're very, very extensive. New Zealand has the same range of things, semi-postals, express stamps, tons and tons of different categories. And you can collect New Zealand a lot easier than you can collect some of these bigger countries, which have many, many more stamps, at least until recent times. Anyway, that's my plug. I'm sorry. I just wanted to thank you.
Oh, well, thank you.
Glenn, one question in the chat is about the responsibility that New Zealand had for Niue and I'm going to mispronounce it, Tokelau, some of the islands that they were dependencies of. Can you comment on what role they had there?
I didn't mention the dependencies in my talk because I don't know a lot about them, but many of those Pacific countries, Niue, Tokelau, Samoa, Cook Islands, had New Zealand stamps overprinted and valid for use on those islands.
Right. So yes, they were definitely part of the New Zealand postal system.
I don't know that any of those dependencies exist anymore, and they produce their own stamps, and some countries like the Cook Islands just produce way more stamps than would ever be used postally from the Cook Islands. But of course, they're a revenue earner.
Or Pitcairn Island, Glenn.
Yeah.
Right.
Pitcairn Island, it's completely living off their production of stamps. I'm sorry, that's their main export.
Right.
Glenn, I have a personal question. I noticed the other day that I got a notice from the Postal Service in New Zealand about counterfeiting. There was a set of counterfeits issued for the 2000 Kiwi stamps or 2023 Kiwi stamps and the scenic booklet. I've not really run into too much in the way of counterfeiting of New Zealand stamps. Have you?
That was the first I'd heard. So United States Postal Service has a huge problem with counterfeit stamps, and go onto eBay, you can find current forever stamps for sale at half price. Bob, did you notice if those New Zealand stamp booklets were being sold at under face value?
That was the notice.
Yeah.
But it's the first time that I can recall counterfeiting it being an issue with any of the New Zealand stamps.
Me too.
Yeah. But I mean, there were fake New Zealand stamps and certainly fake overprints on New Zealand stamps for years.
Right.
And if you, Glenn, you may, I don't know, it's up to you, but you may want to think about adding F for fake and show some of the fakes and fake overprints. And the other one that I would suggest is I'm a cover nut. If you show a few covers and how that might be interesting too. But your presentation was just fine, just perfect. So I mean, I'm only throwing those out as suggestions. But
Thanks. As I move along with it, I'll
yeah,
definitely advise.
Anyone else with questions? Well, I think not. So, and Anton, I believe, is Diane going to go
Yeah,
next?
let's go to Diane and she can give us the announcements for the evening.
Okay, good evening, everyone. And I want to say thank you very much, Glenn, for that wonderful and informative, especially to me, presentation. I'm a fairly new New Zealand collector, so I saw some stamps that I recognized and some I didn't. So I got a long way to go. That was great. I loved it. We have just posted the evaluation for this presentation. It's in the chat, and we would appreciate if you would complete that and give us any feedback that you can. Our next LASO meeting will be Tuesday, December 17th, and we're calling it our holiday social hour, which means a chance to get to know each other, share what you collect, share ideas, ask questions. We're going to do some breakout rooms like we have done in the past, and maybe have a half an hour together in small breakout rooms. And then afterwards, we'll all join back together and ask for volunteers to share if they learned anything or if they want to ask a question of anybody, etc. So we hope to see you then. And then in January, on January 21st, we're going to have a presentation by Charles Tacoma entitled Development of Perforations on U.S. Postage Stamps. And you can find the full list of these programs, these upcoming programs, along with recordings of any programs you may have missed along the way under learningaboutStamps.org. Just click on programs and it'll bring you right to it. Also, if you go into the website, a reminder that stamp collectors of all levels and interests looking for help can pose their questions to knowledgeable volunteer member guides on our site. You just click on the philatelic guides in there and you'll find various categories and clickable links to a volunteer member or members, because sometimes there's multiple people that collect the same or can give you advice on the same thing, that you can then email a question or ask them to help you with whatever you might need help with. There's also, if you would want to become a volunteer guide, you can, in that same area, there is a link for you to click on that and fill out information, and we'll get you added to the site. And that's all the announcements that I have. I do want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving for all the U.S. members here, and don't eat too much. Okay, that's all I have.
Diane, thank you very much. Glenn, I got to tell you, I was absolutely fascinated with the presentation, but when I discovered that there are stamps for pigeons, I got very excited, and I must tell you, I got distracted. I went immediately to eBay to see if I could pick one up. I'm not going to be able to sleep tonight. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. What I'm going to do right now is stop the recording, which I have just done.